Parent, educator, and speech-language pathologist partnerships for supporting multilingual children in Iceland. The majority of people in Iceland speak Icelandic. There are approximately 315,000 Icelandic speakers in the world, and the majority of Icelandic speakers live in Iceland. Iceland has a population of 375,000 people. Icelandic is closely related to Old Norse, and its closest living language relatives are Faroese and Western Norwegian. Traditionally, children in Iceland grow up speaking Icelandic, which they learn from their parents. In elementary school, children begin to learn Danish and English and will continue these subjects through most of their school years. In secondary school, grades 11 to 13, more than 70% of students elect to study a foreign language. The most frequently learnt language is English, followed by Danish, Spanish, German, and French. Many students study multiple foreign languages. From this perspective, multilingualism is normal and valued in Iceland. The majority of people are multilingual. It is something that people become. Multilingualism is advantageous, and foreign languages are required after Icelandic is learnt. However, multilingualism in Iceland is changing. A growing number of children in Iceland are from homes that use languages other than Icelandic. For example, in 2017, over 12% of children enrolled in pre-primary education in Iceland were exposed to languages other than Icelandic at home. It should also be noted that there's approximately 98% of preschool-aged children in Iceland do attend preschool. Preschool education is free for all families, and children can attend preschool from 2 years to 6 years of age. Formal education starts at 7 years of age. In 2017, over 47 different languages were reported to be used in the homes of preschool-aged children. The most frequently reported languages were Polish, English, and Lithuanian. This shift in the language profile of Icelandic children is being driven by migration and has occurred over a relatively short period of time. From this perspective, multilingualism in Iceland is new, challenging, and difficult to manage and support in early childhood contexts. Multilingualism is something that is forced by the situation of the child, the family, and the society. There are now many children who are becoming multilingual in the preschool and early formal education years. Multilingualism is a game of catch-up for children struggling to attain proficiency in Icelandic before they start formal schooling. Another challenge is that this new group of multilinguals in Iceland are incredibly heterogeneous compared to the traditional type of multilinguals in Iceland. Multilingual learners are incredibly diverse across a range of characteristics that can create meaningful differences in their speech, language, learning, and educational experiences and outcomes, even when we're only considering preschool-aged children. Examples of this diversity include the language or languages used in the children's homes, the age at which acquisition of each language began, the skills of the learner and their parents, siblings, and extended family in each language, the learners and their families' literacy skills in each language. More broadly, this also includes the domains that each language is used in, such as for education or for religion, the status of each language, that is it a minority language or majority language? Does the language hold prestige? And finally, the attitudes to multilingualism of the family, professionals, and community. So what do we know about the outcomes of this new group of multilinguals in Iceland? Not a lot, and there's not so much good news. To date, there's limited research on the development and outcomes of multilingual children in Iceland. A number of small-scale studies have reported the difficulties that children from non-Icelandic homes have in acquiring age-appropriate Icelandic skills in preschool and throughout formal education. Long-term difficulties with Icelandic can be related to education outcomes. For example, half of all students with 2 non-Icelandic parents drop out of upper secondary education. And of course, this is due to many factors that are more complex than simply how many languages a child speaks or where their parents are born, but it is concerning. In addition, recent research examining the perspectives of educators working in preschools and elementary schools indicated that overall, educators felt incredibly ill-equipped to support children from multilingual backgrounds in their classrooms. So then what can we do? What do children growing up in multilingual environments need to become successful multilingual language learners? The key is adequate exposure to all the languages that they are acquiring. Think of a child learning Icelandic in a monolingual language environment. They're exposed and using Icelandic for many, many hours every day. Now think of a child acquiring Icelandic and Farsi. They need just as much language exposure, but they need that exposure in 2 languages, not just 1. This is one reason that raising multilingual children is so hard, because there is a constant need to provide an environment that is both rich in the languages that the child is acquiring. But then how do we do that? We need to ensure that the child is immersed in rich language and literacy experiences in all of their languages. We need to make sure that in those environments and experiences, that the language models they are exposed to are engaging and skilled language users. We need to keep a close eye on children's progress in the acquisition of all their languages to monitor for delays and signs of speech and/or language disorder that may exist independently of multilingualism. There needs to be good communication between home and school to monitor language development and to bridge linguistic and cultural gaps. And there needs to be a plan in place for children's language acquisition, because failing to plan is planning to fail. So where do we go from here? Well, there's no ready-made solution that we know will work in the Icelandic context. So we've developed a plan of research. We are taking a detailed look at practices for working with young multilingual children from an international perspective, looking at evidence for interventions, talking with experienced professionals, and engaging with specialist researchers on this topic. It is the results of this part of our plan that we'll be discussing today. We are investigating the Icelandic context, the skills, needs, attitudes, and beliefs of key stakeholders involved in raising children from multilingual environments in Iceland. This is currently underway, and we hope to have some results to share soon. Given what we have learned about the Icelandic context and international practices, we will work with Icelandic teachers, speech language therapists, and researchers to develop an intervention suitable to use in Icelandic preschools. And most importantly, we'll then evaluate the impact of that intervention and share this information in Iceland and internationally. It's not enough to do something. We owe it to the children and families we work with to know that we're doing something that's effective and work to refine that intervention so it's as effective as it can be. So in order to determine what evidence-based interventions exist for supporting young multilingual children's development, we've conducted a rigorous, systematic review of the literature. The review team consists of myself, Mark Giberson from the University of Wyoming, and Carla Washington and students from the Pedals Lab at the University of Cincinnati, particularly Sisan Quero. And we asked 3 related questions in this systematic review. Which studies have investigated intervention strategies targeting speech, language, and/or early literacy skills in multilingual preschool-age children with speech and/or language disorders, and/or who are at risk of poor speech, language, literacy, and/or educational outcomes? Which interventions reported on in high-quality studies have positive outcomes and positive effect sizes related to these outcomes for these populations? And which interventions have been examined and reported with sufficient rigour to be considered evidence-based practices? So participants in included studies must have knowledge and/or use 2 or more spoken languages, be aged between 0 and 6 years, not be enrolled in formal education or mandatory education. They need to have been diagnosed with a speech sound disorder, developmental language disorder, or another disorder of speech and language with no associated disabilities. Or the children have to be identified as being at risk for difficulties in speech, language, or education, such as being enrolled in a Head Start preschool in the US. The outcomes of interest were speech production, language, global communication skills, and early literacy skills. All kinds of interventions in any setting by any agent were included, as long as an intervention was conducted and pre- and post-intervention data were presented. And from the 18,000 records identified, 52 studies were included, which described over 4,000 participants. Studies described children with speech sound disorder, developmental language disorder, but mostly children who are at risk. Articles describe children being at risk for reasons such as socioeconomic disadvantage, being multilingual, and or having an identified delay in language or learning without the diagnosis of a disorder. Studies describe children from a variety of locations and who used a variety of languages. Articles reported on participating children living in 10 different countries, with the majority coming from the United States, followed by Canada, the UK, Australia, Germany, Luxembourg, South Africa, the Netherlands, and Turkey. The home language most reported across studies was Spanish, followed by English, Arabic, Turkish, Bengali, Dutch, French, Mixteco, Punjabi, and Russian. And a further 26 home languages were reported each in one study. The language of formal education that the children were being prepared for was either stated or inferred in articles. And these languages were most often English, but also French, German, Isikosa, Luxembourgish, and Turkish. The research methodologies used in these studies were either experimental group comparison designs or single case experimental designs. So the 52 studies described 57 different interventions. Interventions address speech, language, and literacy. They were most often delivered by professionals. They most often occurred in an education setting, such as a preschool. The community language was the language most often targeted, but the intervention was typically delivered in the home and the community language. And only 14 of the studies achieved the level required by the Council for Exceptional Children's guidelines to be considered high quality evidence. And 13 of the 14 high quality studies described language outcomes, 6 described literacy outcomes, and none described speech sound outcomes. The majority described an intervention provided in an education setting and being conducted by an educator. The majority focused on children who are at risk, and all of the studies, or nearly all of the studies, reported a positive effect size for at least one domain. Only 2 studies examined the same intervention, and 3 studies compared monolingual and bilingual intervention, with all of them showing that bilingual intervention led to greater gains in the community language than intervention in the community language alone. And so when we look at the interventions rather than the studies, there was only one study which met the recommendation for evidence-based practice, and this was Nuestros Niños. It is a professional development program, and it's based on systematic intervention components aimed at promoting language, literacy, mathematics, and socio-emotional development in pre-kindergarten children who are English and Spanish dual language learners. 7 interventions potentially inform the evidence-based, and 5 didn't have sufficient evidence to inform. So what does this mean for our practices with young multilingual learners and their families? First, not all kinds of multilingualism are equally valued within society and education systems. Some kinds of multilinguals and languages hold prestige, and some are viewed as a disadvantage, a complication, or a drawback. So it's important that you check your own views on languages and those of the people around you to get a better understanding of how we can support these children with a positive attitude. Second, finding solutions does not belong with the confines of one group or another. Children, parents, families, and professionals from a range of backgrounds, as well as education providers, system administrators, and legislators, all need to develop, trial, and implement effective solutions for our young multilingual learners. Third, not all evidence is equal. High quality evidence is hard to find, but the majority of evidence that you base your work on is very important. Finally, we all need to play a role in creating more evidence for deciding what is effective as well as ineffective in supporting our young multilingual learners to become learners with the skills they need in the languages that they need to be successful in their lives.